Podcasting since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts radio network. kingofpodcasts.com.
The king of all media, the last of a dying breed, is seriously on the way out.
The King of Podcasts radio network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Welcome. This is episode 397 of the Broadcasters Podcast. Thanks for joining me here on the program. King of Podcasts here with you. And yes, it's going to happen. It's finally going to be. Howard Stern will have lasted 20 years at SiriusXM before his contract at the end of the year is set to expire. Word is that SiriusXM might offer some kind of a deal to Howard Stern, but it will not be the $500 million he has received in the past over 5 years. Therefore, we know that other podcasters under the same umbrella of SiriusXM, they've been getting the money. We talked about this last August, and I mentioned how this was all going to change for Howard eventually. Not much that can be said about that. So as soon as it does, there's not much more that Howard can do. You know, I've talked about Howard Stern plenty of times on this program, and the one thing I will not do, and I will not use it as an excuse like some other people might use it, because there are shows out there that will go on a political tirade about everything, and I'm not going to do that here because I know it's not that way altogether. I understand that everybody wants to make it that way, but not to me. So it was August of last year when the Call Her Daddy Network and Alex Cooper got a pretty good deal. And then things just continued to change. And from there last year, I talked so much about what was changing for SiriusXM. And of course, SiriusXM last year, towards the end of 2024, they were struggling. Their fourth quarter report wasn't doing well, and they had to make changes. So they had to figure out what they were going to do next. But now 20 years is significant for Howard Stern because that's how many years he lasted at WXRK, K-Rock in New York, prior to his ousting at WNBC, or before that DC 101, before that, you know, we can go on to that. And for him, was really the most successful morning radio show in all of radio. And let's just say there are a lot of radio shows after Howard left. They tried to go and continue on with the same idea of, well, we're going to keep doing the same thing with, you know, what's kind of been called man talk or what's been called just shock jock radio. But all those types have also left. They tried to stay around, but, you know, on their own, Howard was the one who was taking the bulk of all the issues that were going on, but not this time around. So I did talk about this, and I went through several different comments about August of last year, that Call Her Daddy, the podcast grab for SiriusXM, because it was not just their show, but eventually Stern was going to see a sunset. And I said by the end of his contract, that's what's expecting to happen. And I called that out August of last year. Let me go and play back what I had said. So SiriusXM now is in a quandary. This week, they decided to go ahead and make a big acquisition. Much like when Joe Rogan was given a big deal to go to Spotify, SiriusXM has signed a multi-year deal for Alex Cooper's Call Her Daddy podcast and her network of shows under the Unwell Network that will give the satellite radio company the exclusive right to sell ads on the audio and video versions of her show, as well as bonus content and events. The agreement is worth more than $100 million for more than 3 years, according to a person familiar with the arrangement. Cooper previously worked with Spotify to distribute her program, but before that, the show was on Barstool Sports. And according to Edison Research, it's the 7th most popular podcast in the U.S. in the first quarter of this year. Her show has racked up more than 4 million followers. So the idea for SiriusXM is they're trying to reinvigorate subscriber growth, according to Bloomberg intelligence analysts. Exclusive content is key for Sirius, especially as his contract with Howard Stern expires at the start of 2025. And so Howard Stern has not re-signed yet. Normally those deals are 5-year deals. But at the moment, given the current economic climate, and given Howard Stern's age, we're not expecting to see Howard Stern. And also, with the limited amount of time he even does a show in the first place, we can't expect to say now, he's now 70 years old, he's 71 years old, if he starts another year with SiriusXM. The idea is it something where will Howard Stern be able to command the kind of money that he wants? And if he doesn't, why would he stay? August 24th, 2025. That's when I put that out. And I laid out the reasons why. Listen, over $100 million for that show. Also, Megyn Kelly also getting, I think, $100 million as well, and has her own set of shows underneath her umbrella for podcasting as well. SiriusXM tried to go and put together a premium podcast platform, trying to go into subscription service, but now they're realizing they need to go back to their original subscribers. But as we said, Alice Cooper, 4 million subscribers, or 4 million listeners. Howard doesn't have that. Maybe at some point he did have several million listeners, but not now. That number has changed a lot. And it just goes through time. I mean, you could say that there are some things that Howard could have done to continue to evolve the show. Somewhat he did. I mean, he did evolve for a good amount of time, especially going from radio into satellite. And then just, there was just certain things of his show that I would have preferred. He didn't apologize for what he did. But maybe if he wanted to phase out some of the more salacious sexual stuff that, everybody was kind of really turning their nose at when it came to the objectifying of women, taking laser pointers and, configuring various flaws that women had on their bodies, or the ones that would get naked and they would just give the farm to these women to get them to get naked, just to get them naked in the set. That was it. It was August 24, 2025. I talked about that. I got another clip that I also, at the same time, talked about this as well. There's been a lot more talk about this. She's much more mainstream, much more placating. There's been a lot more talk about this. She's much more mainstream, much more placating towards celebrities, forming into a more mainstream program because she already has a built-up audience, already has a follower set, and now that she's going to get more money coming off of SiriusXM, the way they market and produce her and promote her, and what will they be doing with her? Because the thing is now is that with all these new shows that are coming up, Alex Cooper, if SiriusXM wants to continue to have celebrities or musicians or stars, there's that kind of the press run that goes along. Who's to say that, Howard Stern used to be the person that would go ahead and get these interviews. Who's to say that, SiriusXM's not going to go ahead and continue to go along with Howard? They can just give the interviews to Alex Cooper or to whoever else they have on. And that's what they're doing. Now, if I have to go ahead and talk about the current or the recent SiriusXM deals that have been put out there, and I just let AI do the talking and let it find out what's happened. If I just do a quick search about SiriusXM's podcast deals in the last 2 years, let's go through what they've already been doing lately. So Alex Cooper is the one. Then they have the collaboration with Audible to put their books on the site. Ashley Flowers, a new true crime channel. She's the host of the hit podcast Crime Junkie. They set a new deal with that. Narrative, a new agreement with Narrative. They launched an initiative that uses AI-generated voice replicas for audio advertising. Morbid, another true crime podcast. So those are getting brought in. And again, Alex Cooper brought in. Podcasting's getting all the investment. And as I said about Alex Cooper and Call Her Daddy, she's already the one right now, currently, getting regular guests. I mean, just right now, currently, who she's had on, just in the last few weeks on the show. Renee Rapp, the singer, Gwyneth Paltrow, Dave Franco, RuPaul, Charlize Theron, Mariska Hargitay, Sarah Jessica Parker, Paris Hilton, Camila Cabello, Sierra, Kate Hudson, Jane Goodall, Zayn Simone Biles, Post Malone, Trisha Paytas, the internet star, Wiz Khalifa, Khloe Kardashian, Halsey, Ed Sheeran, Jack Harlow, Lauren Graham. Need I say more? The thing is that she is interviewing the stars of today that are, significant now. And do they want to go and talk to a younger 30-year-old, 30-something young woman that is in touch with what's going on. Yeah. And that's what leaves Howard Stern in the dust. He's just not part of that anymore. He is not, he's good with, various interviews. When I've seen a lot of clips of his, because I haven't put on Sirius, I have not subscribed to it in years. I did have Sirius for a while, for several years after he switched. I think a lot of us did. And it was fine. But, it's like, there's still a couple of things that were kind of iffy anyway, because they still had to go and do commercials. He still had to have like his 8 to 10 minute commercial breaks because they had to go and set up. I get that part, but it's like, yeah, they always had that thing where they always had to go ahead and continue to do something else. And there were certain things they took out of their show. Robin doing the news at the end of the show. They stopped doing that. I don't know why. And then, letting politics get into anything like he has, and that's fine. He has, all the right to go ahead and speak his mind politically, but alienating part of your audience, that's what you're going to do. And he would kind of get there and he would kind of toe that line so much where he wouldn't want to go ahead and alienate anyone. But at some point, when he can get and command the kind of A-list celebrities that he's had on, who's who has been on a show. When 20 years ago, before he moved from, let's even say 25, 30 years ago, when he was still kind of in his heyday after the Channel 9 show, and he is making celebrities feel uncomfortable, right? Or he has this animosity with celebrities, and then he's patching up with them, the likes of Bill Maher. And then he goes and, he'll have certain stars that he's kind of like bashed in the years, like a Julia Roberts, and then he has her on. It's like it's a hypocritical thing. But those kind of things we can all judge about. But no matter what, at 71 years old, how much drive does he have to do this? He's playing the Johnny Carson card right now. Only doing 2 days a week? That's if he's not on vacation for an extended amount of time. SiriusXM will absolutely take his library. They want to keep that. And I think that's where he's going to get his money. So he's still going to get paid by them, but he will not get the money that he gets for his live program. They're not going to produce that anymore. They don't want to do that. And also the point is they're not going to go and create a podcast for him. And that's the thing I vehemently don't want to see him do. I don't want to see him get into podcasting. That's not for him. I think it's much more feasible that he goes into the realm of interviews, because what he has done in his evolution of his work on that show, it's not been a morning show kind of feel to it. It's where he does sit down and, he has a pretty good team that gets him set up to do some pretty good interviews. And for a lot of times, I always felt like he does pretty good jobs with interviews because they get him well prepared. I don't know how much that is him, but he's good at least preparing and getting the questions done and at least doing something. If it's something that he wants to talk about, that's entertainment, a celebrity, but it's also like, he's not going to go ahead and be controversial like he was. He's not going to make somebody uncomfortable. Those questions he used to ask all the time, but he's not going to do that now. Part of it is he doesn't have the joke writers that he used to have to do that kind of thing. Those are all gone. And so what else goes? There's a number of reasons where you could say where he jumped the shark. I think when Artie Lang had to drop off the show, but obviously he had a lot of issues with drugs. That was pretty apparent. And without that fourth character right there, yeah, everything changed. But I think what really took everything out was when he decided to put out that book in 2019, 2020, to apologize. And just mea culpa for everything he's done. He wanted complete atonement. And I'm like, no, I'm not accepting that. And that's been my biggest pet peeve with him ever since. And that's unfortunate. December 16th, 2005. That is when it was his last edition of the Howard Stern Show, syndicated what was left of syndication, because he was only on so many stations, but because of the Clear Channel issue, where Clear Channel decided to go ahead and cut his show out. There were not a lot of stations that were able to go and carry his show. They took that out. And so Howard was limited to the amount of stations he could be on. And that was when he got the decision to go over to Sirius. And his last stint on radio, AM/FM radio, he got on the stage and he did one of those live events that he did, a big outdoor thing to make a big spectacle of what happened was him leaving after 20 years. So he got on the stage, and this is from his website, by the way, that it was going to be impossible for him to sum up 20 years in a single speech. But he said, and this is all paraphrasing here, but this is from the website, howardstern.com. The most important point he wanted to get across was how much he appreciates what all his fans have done for him. It's not so much the same where it's been 20 years later. Let's just say that. He says that he read an article recently where he was described as the last of a dying breed of broadcasters, quote unquote. He agreed with it, explaining that unlike most people in the broadcasting business who take the easy way out, he's refused to bow down to the government and to the religious right. And he also has added as his final broadcast on regular radio, he will go down in history because the media will never again experience a show like his or the audience has supported for 2 decades. Correct. At that point, where Howard bowed out there and goes to satellite, we were all with him. And it was unfortunate what happened to him. So, I mean, at that time, I would have supported him. He thanked the listeners for being in his corner throughout their career, commented that in some ways they know him better than everyone else. And without them and the ratings they gave him, he would never be able to stand up for free speech the way he has because he wouldn't have had the clout to do so. Well, that's probably a little bit cloudy to say that now today. He always wanted to find people to be a part of his inner circle, and thanks to his listeners, he accomplished that goal. He wanted to comment that nothing makes him feel better than when fans call in to report how hard he made them laugh, because that's what he tries to do. And trust me, I can say that he made me laugh a lot. I mean, I remember the days going either to college or going to work and having Howard Stern on, okay, and I'm listening to him usually, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I'm catching him doing the news with Robin, and whoever else they have in the studio at the time. If it was always Gilbert Gottfried, oh my God, they're going to just go at it. And it was going to be fun. But the news was the best part of the show. I didn't care about the early morning stuff. The interviews, depending on who it was. But if they were kind of like bashing on award shows or certain clips and they were kind of commenting on it, feedback, I love that stuff. And some of the stunts that they had with like certain people coming in, that's okay. The whack pack stuff, hit or miss. But it's fine. But the news where they were just on their own making themselves laugh. Fred throwing in sound effects. Or Robin just getting the right stories in and Howard just making comments. And just like the stuff that was being written for him to go and say. Hitting punchlines. It was great stuff. And then he said that even though they've broken every rule in radio and have already done so much, thinks the ride is just beginning. Talked about how when he was going to go to SiriusXM, he was going to give listeners the best radio entertainment they've ever had. And he finished the address by saying, quote, "Don't break up the family. Stay with us in the future. It's going to be a great ride." Well, we didn't know that the ride was going to end like it did. But look, I mean, regardless of what you think about the way things have turned out towards the end of his run at Sirius, 20 years is 20 years. And still, in radio, there is not anybody like him. He's accomplished a lot. There are a lot of people's careers that, they credit for their careers and the kind of stuff that they can do was due to Howard Stern. And it was the proof that someone like him and good, compelling programming that kept people engaged. I mean, that guy could have a 10, 12-minute break, every hour. We would sit through 10, 12 minutes of commercials. I don't know any other show that you could do that with. I remember when I listened to Man Talk Radio and I was listening to Don and Mike or Tom Likas, and I would try to go and listen, waiting, like Don and Mike would go ahead and have like 8-minute commercials or 10-minute commercials like Howard Stern does. And I couldn't sit through those commercials, not for them. But for Howard Stern, we did. Because there would be a lot of live reads in there and a lot of good ads because everybody wanted to advertise on that show. Everybody wanted to advertise on that show. So you'd listen into the ads. Because you wouldn't be bored by them. You wouldn't have any stupid promos and PSAs and stuff. You'd actually have something that would be important. You might have some advertisers you want to go and support because they support the show. Because they paid big money to be on that show. And especially if you got him doing a live read for some kind of business, local. Oh my God. Everybody was all into it. That's what we had. So into the news itself. The Sun newspaper reported that Stern's outspoken political views, his criticism of Donald Trump, and high-profile interviews with figures like Vice President Kamala Harris might have been a factor of what happened to him. And someone that reported to The Sun about this story, they said, if Sirius is going to give Stern a good offer, I don't think it would have anything to do with his ratings. It's more likely everything to do with the political climate. So as we know, Howard Stern's been around. Early days WNBC, then K-Rock, WXRK. Moved to Sirius in 2006. Pioneered uncensored satellite broadcasting. We know that put out the 1997 autobiographical film Private Parts based on the book. Wrote multiple bestsellers. Miss America was one of those books too. Served as a judge from 2012 to 2015 on America's Got Talent. The thing is, Howard also has a national presence already for what he's done. He doesn't need to be on like network TV or anything like that. But I really think the best place for him to go now is we don't have a lot of good interviewers out there that can just do good long form interviews. Charlie Rose was one of those. Tom Snyder would do really well with those. Like we used to have people that just were really good at good long form interviews. And I'm not talking about Joe Rogan or Theo Vaughn or all these others that are out there. I mean, there was something about having these people doing the kind of shows that are like that, or like Dick Cavett, or just other people like that. David Letterman has a show like that after his run on The Late Show. I think he should follow the same route and stream his own interview series. You know, give him 10, 12 interviews every year that he does. And then he has other things that he does. I mean, obviously he's got his wife, Beth, and he's doing all these things for, pets and all this stuff, like all these other charity things that he's got, very much a socialite in Palm Beach or up in the Hamptons. Like he's got, he's got more than enough money to work with. He could be doing a lot of things. Who knows? Charlamagne the God commented about him. Of course, he's one of the hosts of The Breakfast Club. And he took time to go and weigh on the fact that Howard Stern's run at SiriusXM might be coming to an end. First of all, DJ Envy on his show says, quote, Howard Stern was making $100 million a year, and I think he worked 2 days a week and not working in the summer. Wow, that was amazing. And then when it comes to the value of what Stern brought to SiriusXM, Charlamagne says, quote, he was worth it, though. He put Sirius satellite radio on the map. They gave him a whole bunch of stock 20 years ago. Sirius would probably not have half the success it's had if it wasn't for Howard Stern. And then when asked about rumors that Stern's political views may have influenced SiriusXM's stance, Charlamagne dismissed it. He says, quote, I just know he made $100 million a year. $100 million. So it's just probably financial. Come on, look at the economic climate we're in. Like they said, they're going to make him an offer, but it's going to be decreased from $100 million. It might not be worth his while to do it. He's 71 years old. He just might want to kick his feet up somewhere. Who knows? No, but really it's going to come down to SiriusXM has already been spending money everywhere else. Knowing that we're going to have Howard Stern's contract come up for renewal, and they're not going to renew it. And they don't have to. And the truth is, I think there are a lot of people that will probably agree with me that there's no reason for SiriusXM to go ahead and retain him, especially at that deal. There's no reason now. And dare I say, I think they could have avoided giving him a deal in 2020. I didn't think he should have been there another 5 years. I think by the time he got to 66, he should have just hung it up and did something else. I mean, not shortly after America's Got Talent, and who knows what he would have been doing. But what really hurt him was the whole COVID stuff. That didn't help him. I mean, he just didn't make a lot of fans. And then, the way he kind of handled it, people didn't like it. There were a lot of people that didn't like it. But the thing is that, the way he feels, obviously he's a germaphobe. I get that part, but man, kind of having living that out and the way he felt, man, it just wasn't working for him. So the Sun reported all on this. And one of the other stories he also reported on was what he thought about his fellow stars within the SiriusXM family. There have been big stars at Sirius that have caught Howard's ire. So the Sun in the U.S., they're saying that Howard Stern cannot stand Alex Cooper and her Call Her Daddy podcast because now SiriusXM looks at her as the biggest star. So the 30-year-old podcasting sensation has Howard Stern not happy about her. And SiriusXM executives make sure the two don't cross paths when she's in New York. An insider reports that she's one that bugs him. She gets hundreds of millions of hits, has this mega $125 million deal, and he hates that this young, bubbly woman is a big new thing. That's who they have to keep Howard away from when she comes to New York. Now, Alex left Spotify to sign with SiriusXM last year. We talked all about that here. And the source claimed that talented podcasters like Cooper are leaving old school personalities like Stern in the dust. Quote, "It's completely turned Howard's world upside down. He's been in radio 40 years, and this change has really shocked everyone. Alex and Joe Rogan, these massive podcasters, have traditional radio guys stunned." And the insider also said about Alex Cooper, quote, "She's female, she's the next generation." Yeah. And I can understand how Howard Stern would feel about podcasting take over the industry that he had, because I would be sure that a lot of things could have avoided this kind of thing. The thing is, there's no one after Howard after this. There's no one that has any kind of pull or any kind of real draw or interest from the radio industry after him. It's not in sports. It's not talk radio. It's just not. You know, by the way, I really enjoyed my interview with Michael Harrison last week. That was really wonderful. So glad I had that on. I would really appreciate Michael for coming on. I want to also shout out Ryan McCormick, who I spoke with on my Podcasters Row series. And I appreciate the chance to go and talk to him because of Ryan. And we talked about everything when it came to talk radio and just the changes that are going on. And we didn't even think about where Howard Stern was going to be in that conversation. But let me tell you. I mean, yes, you probably couldn't do what Howard has done before. I don't even know if people would really be interested in having that kind of show if it was still available on free radio in the first place. And then the insider also goes on to say that that's the future. iHeartRadio is desperately trying to find someone like that. Because for their podcast platform, and actually I just heard Bob Pittman on the Tetragrammaton podcast with Rick Rubin, the legendary record producer, Def Jam Records. I must say that was very tough to get through for about an hour and a half. I only got to about an hour and a half of the 2 hours that I actually listened to. A couple of things he did make a point of on the interview, which I thought was kind of interesting about when it came to advertising, the pipeline that when he has to go and make the point about why advertising is so important for radio, it's because of the reach, the amount of people that are actually listening in. We can always dispute if that's actually true or not. But his thing was that agencies don't want to buy traditional advertising and just trust on radio being able to give the exposure, because with digital advertising, programmatic advertising, dynamically inserted podcast advertising, they can get data. They would rather pay money on results that they can actually see on the paper. They want to see metrics. It's been going on for years, and I understand that part. Besides Alex Cooper, another source touched on rumors that Stern was taking issue with Bravo's Andy Cohen, who also has a podcast on there. Andy's interviews are regularly promoted by Sirius, while you just don't hear much about Howard's interviews these days. And one thing also with iHeartRadio, sure, Bob Pittman could go and promote the fact that, I was brought in 2010 to go ahead and work on the iHeartRadio app and build that up. And then, of course, change things up. But they asked me to, Rich Presser, you asked me to go and be CEO. Okay. So he can go on and say that's what he was really there for. And also what Michael Harrison made the point about, and I had to go and take a step back and realize, there is a situation that Bob Pittman inherited because Clear Channel was hemorrhaging with $20 billion in debt. He was around to go ahead and work through the restructuring of the debt to get it down to just under $6 billion now. And they really haven't done much to go and take a dent off the debt anyway, but they're not going to be able to do much anyway. And as long as they don't have to go and pay it off and they can keep extending their loans or their notes, then they'll do that. And they'll go and pay the interest. They don't care. That's not going to be too much on them. But they won't have the kind of money for anybody in podcasting like that. I don't think they'll have the kind of money to go and put on $100 million or $125 million for anybody right now anyway. Plus, who's out there that would be worthwhile to bring on the iHeartRadio for that? Plus, we got to talk about what Amazon did with Wondery. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. The First Insider also makes mention that Howard, who's for the most part has been taping from home since COVID, has his own wing at SiriusXM in New York City. Quote, once you're inside Sirius, you need special access to get to where Howard's tapes. It's his very own wing, and he barely uses it. So, in the last 5 years of this contract, Sirius has gone out of their way to accommodate Howard Stern. And, maybe that headache is not necessary anymore, especially when they have enough people around to replace Howard. And I think Howard Stern probably just thought that he was not going to be replaceable. He was going to leave on his own terms, but you know what? It's not the same. He's gotten older. He's sunsetted. He's lasted as long as he has, but this is it. For radio, I don't think there's not any other places he's going to go. And as I had already mentioned, SiriusXM is expected to negotiate a deal to retain Stern's extensive show library, saying, quote, but as far as him coming back to do the show, there's no way they can keep paying his salary, end quote. And that's true. But also we got to make a point that there is certain traditional programming that's not lasting. I mean, we already know that Stephen Colbert is basically the first domino to all the other late night shows dropping off. Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon. I would not be surprised to see those shows drop off the map as well. Because I think all these networks, all the hemorrhaging money they have where the linear networks are not making any kind of money on advertising, they're hoping to go and put more of their investment into the streaming services. Well, then they're not going to worry so much about trying to worry about, keeping these shows on if they're not pulling in the ratings. And they just cost way too much to do anymore. Well, they could obviously put other programming out there that will be much more cost efficient. The Daily Mail reported that when it comes to his audience, he might have had 20 million listeners a day at his highest peak. But now he figures fans believe that he might only maybe have 125,000 listeners now on average on SiriusXM today. Back in 2015, Howard Stern was cagey about going through another contract renewal. And Bloomberg explored the market dynamics in a long profile about it. One section stood out. On message boards, Stern's fans are tossing out ideas he should move to the internet or sign with Apple or start a podcast. Those couple of years into the podcast boom where Serial and This American Life was all making a big deal about it. But at the time, Howard thought the medium was stupid. And of course, all radio people was. I talk about myself all the time. Don and Mike put me in my place because they thought what I was doing was stupid. Doing podcasting in 2010. Okay. He said, quote, it's stupid. It's a waste of time. If you want to be in radio, forget a podcast. Podcasts are for losers. But again, that's 2015. And I'm sure he probably still feels the same way. I feel like that's probably what he feels like. We know he did try to go ahead and experiment with a paywall before podcasters perfected it. The question is now for some people is that now that he is going to be leaving, I mean, he is still going to be relevant and somebody's going to be out there willing to spend money on him, but not to do a radio show anymore and not to do a podcast. That's not going to happen. I mean, listen, Howard Stern has made enough money in his time. If he wants to go and keep doing the show, he could go ahead and set up some kind of a home broadcast and put it out there on YouTube or wherever he wants. He doesn't have to sign to anybody. He can be completely on his own if he wants to. But does he want to? I mean, if he has an agent that's going to go ahead and represent him and put him somewhere, I think one of the streamers is where he needs to go. Netflix or HBO Max or wherever. So one of those streamers should go and come in and offer an interview show. I think that would be the best place for him. And I said that 5-10 years ago. He should have made the move over there. Instead of just staying in radio because, the audience was dwindling. And was he still staying relevant? Was he enjoying it? Did he still have the gusto to keep doing it? Was he still doing it for his listeners? So some of the places they talked about. We know Howard doesn't want to do a daily show anymore, which is why he should just do an interview show or something like that. Spotify would be a place that they think somebody might pick him up. Joe Rogan uploads a few times a week. Call Her Daddy still has a deal to go ahead and be able to go and put her shows on Spotify. Bill Simmons is selected with the podcast output. And Spotify, of course, getting a name like Howard Stern would definitely go and turn the tables back over to them versus their work with SiriusXM trying to go and compete with them in the podcasting realm. For Stern, it would be an exit ramp from satellite and a re-entry into a platform that has no hesitation about letting his stars control the cadence. But he didn't have any issues before at SiriusXM. iHeartRadio. People have talked about the fact that, okay, and I actually brought this up to a friend of mine, what would be the thought process if traditional radio decided to go and take him back? Because things have changed, obviously, even just the personnel that might have been around at the time. Things might have changed. And with Howard Stern, you could say to yourself, well, think of the ad dollars he could bring in. If you brought him back on, make a big plug for the fact he's back on free radio. And then give him like a good chunk of the advertising, stock, whatever you got, and then just find a way to go and get him on board. But the thing is, it wouldn't be so much for the money. It would be for the fact he'd be back on a big, large platform. And iHeartMedia can offer that. So syndication, once again. So currently the lineup that they have right now, Ryan Seacrest, Bobby Bones, to Premier Network staples like Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, iHeartMedia, they have to put a lot of money out for some of these stars that they have right now. And there are a number of personalities that are on iHeart, Keith Olbermann, Charlamagne the God with the Breakfast Club. The iHeartRadio app would be a good place for him to go and continue to have his content, because then it would also amplify the iHeartRadio app in terms of in terms of advertising and all. He would still have like a full scale digital experience with no paywall. And so maybe the fact that people don't have to pay for him anymore, that would be a draw. But would there be enough money that radio can even offer him? I mean, they're not going to be able to offer him $100 million a year, but if there's something they can offer where, if the radio stations would even be willing to go ahead and pay the fees to go ahead and take that show on. I mean, we know that morning shows are not done locally anymore, but if you want to get a morning show that maybe kind of continues to move on and you put them over there, I don't know. They talked about Peacock, and of course his time on America's Got Talent, maybe the relationship he has over there, a weekly Peacock exclusive Stern series, long-form interviews with celebrities, politicians, musicians, and newsmakers, not a daily radio show, not a reboot of what he's done before, but Josh Howard in the studio, sitting across from the biggest names in the world, going deep like only he can, and which is what I'm saying he should do. And actually, Peacock could really benefit with him doing a long-form interview show on that format. I mean, I think I would do better than, Kevin Hart doing interviews inside of an ice bath. I don't just think so. And X. I mean, Elon Musk obviously doesn't mind putting other shows on X to see what can happen with it. But could there be something there? That's what he thinks. I mean, there has to be some serious money to put Howard Stern on X. I don't think he would go there either. I mean, no matter the free speech opportunities that X provides. I mean, it's obvious that Elon Musk, I'm surprised actually Elon Musk hasn't actually said anything about that, but obviously would offer the platform. I don't think he would offer the money. He just wants somebody to have everybody out there, but I don't think there's anything where they would be paying for him to go and be on that platform. That will be left to Howard Stern's team to figure out what they want to do. But that's it. At this point, I don't see anything else where he continues to move on. But I think of all those choices, yeah. Interviews, do so many that are scheduled, and he books and records them, and they're set in a studio or whatever kind of format that he wants, but he does the long-form interviews. That is the place where I always thought he was supposed to go. Because then again, podcasting is also going through its own issues right now anyway. Take it from a story from Sherwood.news. The world of podcasting right now, YouTube is now the elephant in the room, just like on TV. So there's a lot more video-first podcasts, and everybody's trying to go that route too. Amazon now trying to go and restructure to favor video-first podcasts. We know that Spotify is doing the same thing. Amazon is restructuring its Wondery podcast business now to shift towards host-centric video-integrated shows. They're cutting 110 people from the staff, and the existing narrative-driven studio and series will be moved under the Amazon's Audible banner, while personality-focused shows like Travis and Jason Kelsey's podcast New Heights will now find a home at Wondery's new creator services team, according to a memo shared by Business Insider. And Amazon in 2020 spent $300 million on Wondery, and now they're looking to go ahead and focus more on the podcast and do something else with it. But one of the things that's also getting everybody all worked up is the fact that while Spotify has been doing things to kind of reshuffle in their podcast division, laying off 5% of staff in June, Odyssey shutting down its audio-centric podcast business, Pineapple Street Studios, after 9 years. And there's a lot of difference where podcasting is trying to go into a video route. Again, but we're not all watching. It's just background. I mean, if it's on there where you happen to see people on screen, okay, we might have it on, but we're not necessarily on YouTube to watch. We're listening. But YouTube is such a great platform to find everything on. That's the biggest part. Which is why this program is on there as well. And I put more time into it. But I'm not going to spend time on putting a camera on to do the program because I don't do it like that. I mean, you have to be doing the show live. And I'm not going to go through and edit through video when it's already so difficult anyway to get good audio and good video together. I'd just rather work on the audio, make sure it sounds good. So YouTube, according to a survey by Cumulus Media and Signal Hill Insights, 39% of all weekly podcast consumers use YouTube as their primary platform, more than double the share from late 2019. That YouTube is obviously getting a lot of traction because of the video content they have, of which many are podcasts. That's what's getting more of anything. Barrett Media, which I catch quite a bit of, that they do a lot of good coverage of radio in general and also podcasting and television, all media in general. They reached out to podcast industry experts this week to gauge what their view is of the development of this, the current industry, the podcast industry itself. And they talked to Amplify Media CEO Stephen Goldstein, saying that this is a meaningful inflection point. While it might feel sudden, the writing's been on the wall. Audible had a significant footprint at Podcast Movement in April, one of the most visible sponsors of podcast show London. And speaking to their biz dev people, there are strong signals that Amazon's trying to realign their podcast strategy. And let's see what they do, because Amazon Music has not been a place I've been really thinking about going to catch content. Like I said, I mean, I've tried Spotify and YouTube and others to go as their podcast portals. And still Spotify is the best one to me overall. Signal Hill Insights President Paul Rismandel says, quote, that the changes being done by Amazon with Wondery is another signpost indicating how podcasting is shifting with the growing influence of creators in video. Quote, podcasting has always been a medium of creators, and I'd argue that podcasters were creators before the term was what we use today. There's always been some line between host/creator-driven and narrative-driven podcasts, and many podcast studios have organized their business understanding the difference. Some specialize in one over the other. The experts they spoke to say that the move doesn't signal an abandonment of the podcast genre, but argued that it could be ultimately leading to an expansion for Amazon to allocate resources more efficiently after cutting the staff. And major implications were set up with this move. I don't know if it makes much of a difference if people are listening more on video anyway, or watching on video. Like if you have to have a video component, I'm still of the mindset it's not absolutely necessary to have a video component. I think it's important now. I mean, I do a lot of audiograms now for my content. So whatever you're going to put up there with some kind of a slate or video, have some elements in there that look clean and look good. Put captions all over the place. That is important. But I still think at the end of the day, I mean, if you're just talking heads and you're not giving overlays, you're not giving any other visuals, I mean, unless you have somebody who's a celebrity and you want to be able to go and see that person speaking, that's another story. But I don't think it's important. I don't think it's imperative. Respando also says that, quote, Amazon's reacting to a changing marketplace, changing consumer demand that has already been the talk of business for quite some time. Podcasting is dynamic and resilient. Despite many predictions of podcasting's decline or death, today there are more podcast consumers than ever before. As long as people want and need media, this is ears first and eyes optional, and this shows no sign of slowing down. Podcasting has a bright future. And podcasting also benefits from a diversity of publishers, creators, producers, and platforms. Still true to note, not one actor yet has enough influence to make or break the medium. That's the other part, too. Who's super famous that it makes a difference to go ahead and have to go ahead and watch the show? Now, if you want to have it referred to on television, yeah, a video component's good. It's smart. But for the most part, it doesn't really matter. And I don't concern myself too much about it either. It's just, I think people just need to realize it's not so much about the content itself. Podcasting will do what it does. But when it comes to the creator aspect, the creators that are out there, whether it's, Get Ready With Me or some other kind of short form content or long form content, the creators that are getting themselves out there, multi-platforming themselves, then I think those are the ones that care. That's more important. And that's a story from Hollywood Reporter about what's going on with the digital firebrands, as they call them on Hollywood Reporter, from Dave Portnoy to Pat McAfee to Brett Cooper. Contrarian podcast voices finding new reach over legacy media. So when you have people that are basically influencers themselves, might not call themselves that, but things are changing. So Fox Sports 1 right now, they're going to have their big noon kickoff college football show with Barstool Sports involved. And Dave Portnoy now part of the panel of that particular show to compete against Pat McAfee, who is on ESPN College Game Day and having its own show over on ESPN. But now the thing is, taking someone who's been a podcaster, influencer, that kind of type, with their own company, entrepreneur as well, for ESPN's Pat McAfee, now you have Fox Sports 1's Dave Portnoy. And that's going to be quite a battle between each other. So Barstool's going to be all over the place now on Fox Sports 1 with their own programming. And with the fact that Fox Sports 1 also got rid of some of their morning show programming that was not performing well and decided to go ahead and cancel them out to make changes. But yes, you're getting people from digital media that are making their way up to the legacy media outlets because they need the help. A multi-platform content strategy. That's what these big corporate media outlets are looking at, where they're seeing there are certain stars that have this kind of platform to get so many people catching up with them. They need to go and do some more with it. They also made the same kind of claim with the fact that Brett Cooper, who was over on Daily Wire, popular YouTube creator that ended up launching her own show after the Daily Wire stuff that was going on over there. And now she is a contributor at Fox News. It's just, people are looking to try to find new talent that is not from your traditional outlets, but from digital. And honestly, for the podcast space. It's kind of what radio used to be. You used to find certain talent that came from the audio space. But these people all have an audio and video footprint themselves, a digital footprint. And that's what they're all looking at right now. It's a big change. And there are others trying to do the same thing. They talk about when it comes to politics, Kara Swisher, Scott Galloway, holding talks with CNN about moving their show into the CNN orbit. But then they decided to go ahead and renegotiate and get another deal with their current partners at Vox Media. But we're going to see some more things like this that will pop up anyway, eventually. It could happen very soon. A couple of music headlines I want to bring up before we wrap things up. And this was something I was going to bring up a few weeks ago, actually a week ago, but these are the couple of stories I did not get because Michael Harrison came on and I had the whole hour with him. So I decided to table a couple of articles that I was going to bring up last week, table them today. K-pop. Billboard also going through a big change of their website. It was very interesting to see that. They have a new report on K-pop fandom in the U.S. So they were looking at the fans listening, purchasing, concert habits, according to a survey of U.S.-based Billboard readers. And they spoke with and communicated with 1,400 U.S.-based Billboard readers who are also avid K-pop fans. And in the survey findings, they say that 82% of respondents listen to K-pop 7 days a week. 72% of K-pop fans listen regularly to pop music. 19% are frequent listeners of Latin music, and 15% are regular country music listeners. 36% of the respondents have been K-pop fans for 5 or more years. Nearly half have followed K-pop for 2 to 5 years. 19% have been fans for less than 2 years. And when it comes to K-pop, there's, a reason for all this going on, because there's a lot of stars and a lot of K-pop acts that are coming out that have been around and are coming around after the big rise of BTS in 2018, 2019, 2021, and what they did before they broke up. There are just other acts that have followed, that same path and now have become significant. So we have right now on Netflix an animated film, K-pop Demon Hunters, and songs from that particular soundtrack have dominated the Billboard charts. Golden, the Hunter X's song, has topped 2 major international charts, the Global 200 and the Global Exclusive U.S. charts. Currently number 3 on the U.S. Focus Billboard 200 album chart. Golden is number 2 on the Hot 100 singles chart. But there are other acts right now that are also getting their way in because of some U.S. influence. BTS and Blackpink have been the 2 stars, the 2 acts we've heard a lot of from when it comes to K-pop. And there's been others. There's been Twice and New Jeans, also coming in. Now we have a group called Cat's Eye, and I actually like the group. I mean, they're all good-looking women, and they all sing really well. And, choreograph is pretty good stuff. So they put on an EP. I like their music. So I'm one of those K-pop fans as well. I will admit. Blackpink, when they all kind of broke off, did their own singles projects. I like what Lisa was doing, what Jennie was doing. Obviously, Rosé was the big standout of that group so far. And then they all came back, and now they have some more music they're putting together as Blackpink once again. But Cat's Eye, quite a bit of influence. It's a partnership through Universal Music Group's Geffen Records. And there's now another North American joint venture with Kakao and SM Entertainments to launch the boy band Dear Alice. And I've heard a little bit of that coming in across the board, but there's a lot going on with that. Growing interest in K-pop and groups born from K-pop's artist development methods. And by the way, Cat's Eye, there's different artists that are not necessarily of Asian backgrounds. You have also Spanish and Indian backgrounds. So it's more of a multicultural group. Like I would almost call it like the Spice Girls of K-pop. But, it's an interesting thing to see right there. Now, one final story to bring up tonight. And I was surprised. I actually heard about this today. And I was one of the few times I went to go see the doctor, a regular checkup. And I turned on the radio in the morning because if I'm going to put the radio on, FM, AM radio, I'll put it on during the morning when I know there's at least some talent on talking. And hopefully I'm not catching commercials. But the problem is I'm always catching commercials on these particular shows. Kind of a problem for these radio stations, okay? You want to at least get to listen in the morning show and maybe catch something you want to catch? Well, I was listening to the Ricky Spelling Morning Show on Hot 105. And I heard this one story during a news update. The BET Hip Hop Awards and the Soul Train Music Awards that have been run by BET, for the last couple decades right now, have been suspended indefinitely. So Rolling Stone reporting that those shows are in limbo. The CEO of BET says these 2 slave award ceremonies will not return for the foreseeable future. The company is looking to reconfigure its place amid changes in media and entertainment. So BET Linear, the Soul Train and Hip Hop Award shows, BET Awards, they're looking right now about where those award shows might best live in the media climate as it continues to evolve, but they're not gone. Soul Train Awards have been around since 1987. Viewers' concerns for the fate of the show increased in 2024 when BET did not have a Soul Train Music Awards show last year. And the social media accounts for Soul Train have not been active since March 2024. The BET Hip Hop Awards, launched in 2006, have aired annually, usually airing in October, and the Soul Train Music Awards would normally be around November, around Thanksgiving. They will still have several award shows that they always present, the NAACP Image Awards and the Stellar Awards, a Gospel Music Awards show. But yeah, BET Hip Hop Awards, Soul Train Awards, gone. I don't know where they come back. But that's also a testament to the music industry as well. Like the record labels, they're all more concerned about selling libraries and letting their older legacy content be what they're going to care about more. Because they don't necessarily care about putting out new music. I mean, what do they want to do? Do they want to just let AI control everything after this? And that's the other thing I can't believe, and I haven't even talked about it, but like AI content, being able to go ahead and get some kind of domination on streaming. I don't listen to AI content. It doesn't make anything I want to listen to at all. Anyway, that's the show for today. Thanks for listening in. kingofpodcasts.com is the website. Come back next week for the Broadcasters Podcast. Remember that content is king and the control of your content is in your hands.